Welcome to Project Pack number 12. This is day 11. My name is Rick,
Hi, I'm Maria.
and we're going to work on a Zentangle today.
Ooh, a beautiful Renaissance Zentangle.
Yes,
My favorite canvas.
right?
Yeah.
And this is a unstrung one. And I'm just going to go straight to ink. I'm using my black pen, and I'm putting a lovely, really solid black dot or orb slightly off center. And
That's an easy enough start.
right,
I can do
we
that.
can do this. And this is going to be a really simple tangle, and I think it's going to look really complicated when it's done, but every step of the way is pretty simple. So I worked with learning this tangle and trying different ways, and this is drawings. And this is a tangle that Maria came up with, and it's absolutely stunning. And I am picking like a finger's width difference, and I'm just putting with my brown pen an S shape that lands on that dot. And I'm just going to figure out, okay, well, how far from the edge-ish, like my finger. I'm going to draw an S shape.
It's a very subtle S.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, yes, subtle, yes. And I'm not going to put too many of these in. I want to leave some space. So again, S shape, and you'll notice I'm rotating my tile each time. And since that dot is off center, and I'm going sort of from the same distance from the edge, those S shapes are all a little bit different lengths. And I think I got room for one more here. So we got another S shape coming. And I'm always thinking about what's the most comfortable position for drawing whatever I am drawing. And I make that, where my hand is. So now I'm looking for about 2/3 and on one side, and I'm going to aim for that 2/3 by drawing little arcs. So like one of the elemental strokes in Zentangle. And since these look like wings, what got me stuck at the beginning was I was trying to draw wings. But I ended up figuring out a way that for me is a really easy way to tangle wings instead of even thinking about what it is that I'm doing. So I'm just putting in these arcs, going from the tip of one and targeting about 2/3 on the other. And maybe I get there in 3. If I don't, well, I could go, no, I think I'll just make that one 3, but I think one of them may or may not be. This one's 4. So I'm not worried about how many arcs. I'm just putting in arcs to get to the other edge.
How many arcs does it take to get to the other side?
Right. Now we know.
Now we know. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. So on that same concept of takeoff and land, I am imagining drawing an S shape almost to that center dot, but not getting there. And this is that, the idea of the feathers in this drawings.
Very hard to say.
Right, and it's spelled drawings.
I know.
We pronounce it draw rings, but it's
Drawings.
or drawings.
Drawings.
I pronounce it drawings.
It's the R in
It's the
the
R.
New England accent.
Yeah.
We always put R's in when there aren't, and then take them
Not
out.
when they're right, exactly. So whatever I do in one place, I do every place, and that's that whole concept of patterning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is pretty much all of the ink the basic shape with the ink. And I'm going to approach shading as a pattern now.
I just want to jump in here. That's his brown chalk pencil that he cut in half because he likes to work with small pencils. So don't be afraid that you don't have one of
Right.
those. You actually have one,
You have
or
two
maybe
of them.
two, if you wanted to cut it in half
Right.
like Rick does. Yes.
So I'm going in all of those,
Like the second feather.
the second feather, the second and subsequent feathers, halfway. So I set these little games with myself in tangling. It's like, okay, I'll pick something, and then I'll just repeat it throughout the whole tangle, and or with across the whole tile, and then I'll look at that, and then I'll see what I want to do next. So having put that down, I'm now taking my tortillon, and even though I went only halfway, I'm pulling it as far as I can over to where the line ends. And that makes a nice
A softness.
gradation
Yeah.
or brownation here.
Brownation.
Brownation. And without it starting or without it stopping too abruptly. And you might be able to tell I'm having a very light touch. It doesn't need much. This paper is really wonderful because it grabs the color without a lot of effort. So I missed that one. We'll put some back in. And the reason I cut it, the pencil, is I like being able to hold it at a low angle with the end of the pencil in my palm. So we got that one. And now I'm going to, okay, well, let's see, what next? So I'm going to get my white, and I think I'm going to add a little bit of highlight, and then we'll see what that looks like. So I'm again doing that idea of not going all the way in, and just laying down a dollop. Is that what we called it? A dollop?
A dollop?
A dollop
Sounds
of
good.
chalk.
I love to move the white chalk around. It has this creamy to it that other chalk pencils don't have.
Right.
It's just this, it's such a nice tool. I love it.
Well, it's this family secret formula of
Yeah.
General Pencil. It's very cool. So I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, nah, I want that white to go all the way in. So now that I've made that choice, I'll simply go and do that on each one.
So Rick's designing this on the fly.
Yes.
So a lot of times we have, first you do this, then you do that. But in this particular situation, he's sort of just playing with it as he goes along, has no idea what it's going to look like.
Right. And I did, before I did the video, I did get my sequence of initial strokes to where I thought, okay, this would be a good way to show this tangle. But after that, all of this is being done. I've never done this before. So now I decided, well, I want to have some darkness where those, feather inspirations curve around. So I'll just go around on each one of those and add that in. And the idea that I have in the back of my mind is to try to have white and dark next to each other so that there's a sense of contrast throughout. I don't always do that, but isn't that amazing? I mean, that tortillon, it just looks like so beautiful, subtle.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome. So again, I'm going to work with that over and under of the wings. So we've got like the wing elements and the feather elements. So just put those, smooth that brown in there. And remember, turning your tile and having the point of whatever your tool is to the edge that you're, focusing on is a really big help. So if you remember my idea of having light and dark, on one side of the line is dark, and then the other side I'm putting that white chalk. And I'm also sort of experimenting with putting some highlights in the middle of that over and under of the, the feather that's right next to the next wing. And as you're doing this, when you're putting this down, it looks so different before you smooth it out with the tortillon. So just be
Be patient.
be patient with
And
your work.
Know that it works. Yeah. And you can always add more. It's one of those things you test out the waters there, and then buff it down with your tortillon, and then you can add more if you want.
So I picked up my brown tortillon because I'm now mixing the white and the brown. So I'd rather have the brown get browner than the white also get brown. And as soon as I started that, I thought, I want to have all of the inside of this tangle be some variation of brown or white chalk. So I'm just going in and layering down some more chalk, because then I'm going to go back in and put them all together with the tortillon. And wherever you put it, it really doesn't matter. It just becomes this beautiful.
So it's actually part of the if you consider the fact that it's part of a pattern as opposed to a light source, where in other art forms, when you're learning to shade, there's always a light source and then a shadow and this and a secondary shadow and all those kind of things. And this is all about pattern. So at some point in time, once in a while, we may talk about a light source, but for the most part, the lights and the darks are part of a significant part of the pattern.
Exactly. So again, in that idea of the light and dark and the chalk as part of the pattern, once I decide to do it in one element or one component of this tangle, I'll just do it in all of them, because that's part of the patterning. So I just made it a little bit darker towards the center there. Smoothing it out. And again, very light touch, very light touch. You'll be so surprised how light you can need to go with that. So that's looking pretty good. I still want to have a little bit more contrast happening there. So I'm going to pick up my graphite pencil, and with a nice, pretty sharp tip, I'm going to delineate the wing elements. So it's almost like there are 5 wings coming off that center part.
Let's see, I like what that does right there. That's kind of a nice contrast, adding that gray.
And you notice how obvious it is when you first put it down, but as you blend it in, it blends with the white and the brown, and it isn't that obvious anymore. And these are just all steps, so think of these as part of the pattern. So I'm going back in and restating that lovely infinite whole there of, it's like this is coming out of this marvelous field of unlimited possibilities here, and this is what's coming into this world almost. So as you use the chalk and the graphite, the lines get a little
Muddy?
yeah, they get muddy, and it's almost like there's like a little piece of wax paper over them or something. So I'm going back in and restating those lines. And you can see it, again, you might not have noticed it, but it gets a little bit crisper and it really delineates one part from the other.
And it's a great exercise in controlling your pen. You know, you learn to do this as time goes on, and those are kind of exercises which are a little more precise than most tangling when you're going over an existing line. Take your time, focus.
And you may notice that just as it gets to that little center orb, I'm making the line just a little bit thicker, so it just has a tiny bit of weighting there. W-E-I-G-H-T-ing. And yeah, what Maria said is like going over that line is like tracing your signature is very different from signing your name.
That's
right?
a hard thing to do.
And I'm playing around with emphasizing these other lines because, you know, the chalk was going over it. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, I'd rather weight it from the other side and have it be less precise as it gets to the inside. So let's do that. So almost all of the lines in this tangle I restate, and it is a really good exercise. And you'll notice that the arc is away from my hand, and for most people, I'm guessing, is that's more comfortable, you know, because you're sort of like pivoting on the heel of your hand, and it's almost like your hand becomes a bit of a compass. And I didn't like that. You know, I want that to be a little de-emphasized as it comes to the middle. So you can always go back in and play with it. So again, we're emphasizing the edge between light and dark, and that just enhances the whole sense of contrast. And at first you might not notice it, but if you were to like compare before and after, this has much more snap to it. And it's also fun tracing over the lines. Okay, it's gouache time. So I'm working and twirling my pen as I've learned, and I'm playing around with finding the density of gouache that I want for this purpose. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to cover the whole background with gouache. I guess I wasn't happy with that. We've really gone through our gouache on this one here.
So after you finish your pots of gold and experience the whole thing with working with gouache, there are many different kinds you can find in your art supply stores. There's Turner's gouache, which is one of my favorites. In some of the other popular paint companies, they all make gouache and in gold, in different tints of gold. You can get silver. I used to get an orange gold that was my absolute favorite, and I used it all the time, and they stopped making it. So if anybody has an old tube of orange gouache gold at Turner's, I would buy it from you. I'm putting out my request.
When I started, I left just a little, I'm going all the way out to the edge on this because I want to have as little overlap as possible, because by the time I get all the way around, that first bit of gouache is drying. And so this way, I won't have too much, you know, double layering there.
But what do you call it?
Reconstitutes
the line so that it's like working with watercolor, or even it's more like poster paint.
Oh, that's true.
It has a little grit to it.
Yeah. Okay, so now you're not done with your painting until you put your brush away, and I rinse it out in water,
And you
and then,
twist it. Can
yeah.
you see him twisting it so that you get a nice tip when it dries? So after it dries,
Yeah.
this is a half hour to 1 hour drying time right there.
Right, so we're down in the basement, and so I have the heater going, and I'm holding in front of the heater, and again, I want a little bit more contrast. So I'm going to try out on this particular one and see, okay, how does that look just by adding a little graphite there, and
I like that.
I like that. So I liked it so much, I'm going to do it on every one. And for me, what the technique that I like is I just put it in a corner, and then with the tortillon, I pull it out.
So you could be holding it out at arm's length when you need to make a decision about something like this. It's a little difficult on camera here, but don't hesitate to hold it out like you're a really famous artist and you are analyzing a very important part of your day.
Well, you are, and you are.
You are and you are.
And some people like to put the graphite down and then pick up the tortillon. I know Molly likes to do that, and I really, the advantage to that is you have a really good sense as you're going of how it's developing. In this case, I went and did all of one step and then are going back and doing all of the next step. You know, turning the tile each time.
Except when you did the first one.
Except when I did the first one. I wanted to see how that looked. So we get all of these done, and you can see the increasing contrast on the edge there because it really snaps with the gold. And that's what I wanted. So most of the light is against the dark, is against the light. I'm going to enhance that little area where they sort of vortex in or out of that. Soften that a bit. Okay.
So this has been a study in contrast and shading, more so than any of our other tiles.
Right.
So Rick's going to take his brown chalk and pretty heavily go around the edge there with it. It disappears a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
more so than a graphite pencil. This chalk pencil, once you start rubbing it in with the tortillon, it softens quite a bit. You can see even just right there how much it softens.
When I was a little kid, I had this phase of making treasure maps, and I would draw maps on a piece of like typing paper, you know.
Oh, I know what you're going to
25
say.
And then I would, you know, when my parents weren't looking,
Burn the edges. I did
burn
it too.
the edges, and then, you know, like this, you know, make it like a little dirty and burnt edges, and it was like, oh, all of a sudden it became really special, and so that's my inspiration here.
I remember doing that.
But like Maria said, you can see it's almost like did something happen there, but it's very subtle. And now I'm going to take the graphite and just a little bit on the edge. So, you know, the brown I probably did in, what, a ½ inch or more. And this is just like barely a 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch maybe. And then I'm blending that into the brown. And
It's sort of like burning it.
yeah,
How's that
it
look?
is. And so there's my treasure map. So I hope you enjoyed this, and we look forward to seeing what you do, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
See you later.
Bye now.
Bye.